Peter Egan, known to many from Downton Abbey, and for those of a certain age, ever decreasing circles. Peter is also one of Britain's most dedicated voices for animal welfare. He's patron of Safe Haven for Donkeys and narrates their new short film, Beyond, which captures something quite rare, a measurable improvement in donkey welfare inside Egypt's brick kilns. It's a story of progress rather than suffering. Peter, such a warm welcome to the Pet Mug podcast.
That's
Can
very kind of you. Let me just say,
I? Lovely to see you. Peter, I recently spoke with a colleague of yours, Dr. Saif Alden, about Safe Haven's work in Gaza.
right.
It was an incredibly humbling interview. Beyond feels just as honest, but with a very different tone. It focuses on progress as well. How important was that shift for you as a narrator?
In terms of donkeys moving
As in
forward,
terms of donkeys and the progress you're actually making out there, which is
well,
incredible.
it was phenomenal from my point of view because I first visited the El Saf region where the brick kilns are, just outside Cairo. It'll be 3 years ago this coming October, and on the day that I arrived at this particular brick kiln, the first thing that greeted me was the most beautiful white donkey lying on its side, and I thought it was dead.
Mm,
And I went up to it, and I could see that it actually wasn't dead. It was exhausted, and it was obviously suffering. Now, what was remarkable was that the team, led by Dr. Shiban and Eslam, they immediately went to work on this really beautiful donkey, underweight with lots of sores
mm,
and uh, teeth problems, hoof problems, all the problems you could think of a working donkey having, this poor donkey had. And within 3 hours, they had this donkey back on its feet again and walking and eating. And they attended to every single issue that this donkey was suffering from its teeth to its hooves to open sores on its body. And I thought, wow, this is just, on
mm,
the one hand, remarkable that this wonderful team that are supported by Safe Haven, the work they were doing was remarkable, at the
mm,
same time as being so shocked that a
mm.
poor donkey could be in this condition as a result of the work it was doing.
Peter, can I
And
just set the scene? Just rewind a little. These poor donkeys are forced to, live on site, work all hours, carrying really heavy loads of
Mhm.
bricks, day in, day out,
Yeah,
in sweltering heat, weighed down by the bricks, getting, sores and,
yes.
aches and, you know, horrendous.
It is horrendous. If I could just condition that a little bit,
Yeah.
they don't do all, they work from 4 in the morning until midday. After
Mhm.
midday, it's too hot for the donkeys or any human to work.
Mhm.
So they work an 8 hour shift that's broken up to a small degree.
Mhm.
And they are in the most, yes, even from 4 in the morning till midday, the heat
Mhm.
is quite extreme, and they are carrying really heavy loads over the most difficult terrain because
Mhm.
there's very little for these poor donkeys to grip onto it. They're
Mhm.
walking over a sand surface, and then they
Yeah.
go into the brick kiln. They deliver this huge pile of bricks. They do a U-turn, come out, go
Mhm.
back to the pile of bricks, and load up again.
Mhm.
Now, and a lot of them had very, very bad harness wounds. Some of them had bad whip wounds on their hind quarters. So their bodies were kind of really in a very distressed state. And
It
and
makes me wonder what the average sort of lifespan of a donkey working in those conditions is. I can't imagine it tragically being very
I,
long at all.
I don't think it's over long in terms of those
Mhm.
conditions and their general condition in terms of food and nutrients
Mhm. Mhm.
and enrichment, etc. I'm not sure of the precise age, but I would think that it would be anything up until 10. But I think a normal donkey's life is probably 15 years or to 20 years. I'm not entirely sure, but it's in that region. So having this experience on my first meet of this poor donkey, I then spent the rest of the morning with the team going around the kiln, going into the brick baking area, watching men and boys also working under a great strain because they work as hard as the donkeys. So their sympathy for the donkeys would naturally be lessened because they're under such great pressure themselves. And they have to produce a certain amount of bricks per day. And I think I was amazed. I think I'm right in thinking in this particular kiln, they were producing something in the region of 180,000 bricks a day, which means they are just working on a rotor. It's grueling, grueling work. So I immediately started thinking and talking to Andy Foxcross, the CEO of Safe Haven, who is, of course, a mine of information about these poor animals. I mean, he in the first instance, I asked him why the donkeys put up with the dreadful behavior that they put up with, because they're so stoical, donkeys, unlike mules or horses who fight back. Donkeys accept so much pain that is delivered. And I said, why do they do that? And he said, well, basically, donkeys are prey animals. And they believe that if they just remain still, then the predator will go away. So they put up with excessive amounts of work and pain, looking like it isn't affecting them. And if you don't understand donkeys, then the donkey handlers, very, very often young children, are just going to, for fun, without necessarily malice, just beat them because they think the donkey doesn't feel it. So that exacerbates the condition and the problem.
Absolutely heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is heartbreaking. And I started then, because I made 3 films there with my colleague and good friend Andrew Telling.
That was over the space of 3 years, I understand. What do you think has changed over those 3 years?
Well, if I can just tell you what I learned was that the team have a red light traffic light system, red, amber, green. Red is a very bad kiln, amber is a kiln on improving, and green is an excellent kiln. So I learned that procedure was in place, and the kiln that we happened to be in on my first visit was very much in the red area. Now the second,
what does that mean as such?
It being in the red area, it's a kiln that practices very low welfare. So the poor donkeys are treated quite badly. They don't get much enrichment. They're just not treated with the kind of care and attention that they need. And also because there is such a lack of understanding about the pain reception of donkeys. They don't. The workers in the kiln and the owners don't realize that they would get much more out of their donkey if they treated it well and it was healthy and it was stronger. So, in answer to your question, what did I learn over the 3 years? On the third time of going there, the kiln that I had visited first, which was red, was now very seriously green because the kiln owners had actually adapted to the care package that was being delivered to them and the instructions being delivered to them by Dr. Shaban and his team and Safe Haven for the donkeys.
So did you find that the kiln owners were quite receptive to the change?
Yes, I did.
It sounds like they are.
They are quite receptive. I mean, in the end, like everything in business, it's all down to the dollar, down to the pound, down to how much money you're going to make. And I do think that what was also wonderful on the third visit, firstly, I mentioned harness wounds. In the green kiln we went to, they had someone who was a harness maker. and he was making harnesses to fit donkeys with much less pressure and a softer relationship between the harness and the donkey's front quarters, its shoulders, as it were. And so there were far fewer harness abrasions. He also had produced a very nice kind of padding for the donkey's back. And that helped with the overall harness. And the kids were beating the donkeys less. They were doing it more out of boredom than out of anything else. So the general condition of the donkeys were much improved. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean a lot, because no donkey should be in that condition. It should all be automated, because it isn't a job for an animal to be doing. It's something that we would have done pre-industrial revolution.
The film also looks, just to tie in with that, the film also looks at tractors replacing donkeys. Do you see that as a real future?
I do, yes, I do. Yeah, I think automation is the future. The thing that I also thought was fabulous on the third visit was we arrived at the kiln just after dawn, really. It was very early, and I was greeted by a tractor steaming through the kiln, as it were, delivering this tray of bricks. The difficulty it faced was negotiating the entrance into the oven itself, and then coming out again. That's where the donkey is so deft; it can take this huge bundle of bricks on wheels into the oven and do a U-turn and come out very, very easily. It was rather cumbersome with the tractor. But nevertheless, the enthusiasm of the worker using a tractor as opposed to a donkey was evident. And he was clearly enjoying that whole process much more. So what it has been developed further to that is that they are looking at smaller miniature kind of tractors, or smaller automated vehicle kind of things that might, like a put, those kind of things. And so they are now in the process of developing smaller forms of automation that can in fact do the U-turn in the oven, and make that much more easy to manage. So and certainly the kiln owner in this kiln was absolutely committed to finding an alternative to using donkeys. I think he showed great sympathy for the donkeys, as indeed
that's half the battle, isn't it?
That is half the battle. Half the battle is, and I find this, and I'm sure you find the same, Ari. I find this in animal rights and welfare throughout the world, is people understanding that, in fact, these wonderful animals are sentient. And I think once they latch on to that, because it's a huge cultural leap, certainly for people in the subcontinent or third world countries, where animals are used as beasts of burden, and they are not considered companions or sentient in the way that we consider them in a more
often
modern...
a different culture, and it's what they've grown up, passed through the generations.
Exactly, absolutely. And so young children aren't taught to care about it, so they treat animals as toys. And I do find that throughout the world. I travel throughout the world, to Vietnam and throughout the whole of Europe and America, of course. And, that's a condition that most humans suffer from, which is a lack of deep dimensioned compassion.
Speciesism, if you like.
Because
we're all part of the animal kingdom, even you.
We are, of course, yes, and you're quite right. It is speciesism, and it's speciesism that when a person who has a dog feels they are compassionate because they care about their dog, but they are quite happy to eat any other animal. And that is the clearest definition of speciesism that I can think of. But yes, that's the problem, yeah.
Peter, you've been a voice for animals for decades now. Was there a particular moment or perhaps one animal that set you on that path?
Yes, I think there was, and it was a dog, of course. It was a
Mm,
dog that I rescued in 1999. I already had two dogs prior to rescuing
mhm,
this wonderful. I was at a charity in North London called the National Animal Welfare Trust, and I was in their cattery, and I saw a bucket running around the floor on its own, like a bit of magic. And I
mhm,
asked this lovely woman, Edna, who was in charge of the cattery. I said, what's happening there?" And she said, "Oh, that's a spaniel collie puppy that we rescued, absolutely
mhm.
tiny, and he loves one. He gets great comfort hiding under the bucket, and he loves running around with it." So I got down on the floor, and I just opened lifted the lid off the floor. I had a much longer beard at the time, and I looked there, and he came out attached to my beard. I came out,
Oh,
and there was this wonderful little puppy who could just fit in the palm of my hand. He was so small. He'd been
bless.
abandoned from a puppy farm in Wales, and just thrown away. I mean, it was just appalling. Now,
Mm,
he turned out to be my gatekeeper. He was the most beautiful, beautiful dog. I mean, in spirit as well as visually. And so, being a Spaniel Collie cross, he had a white bib and a black coat.
mhm.
So I called him DJ after dinner jacket because it looked like he was wearing a dinner jacket. And during the early months of him being a part of mine and Myra, my late wife's life, I noticed that he was slightly different to the other dogs that we had in that he was really focused on me, which of course is always very appealing if you're an actor to have that kind of attention. And Myra said, he's extraordinary. He knows when you're coming home. He waits by the door just 10 minutes before you get in.
Have an
Um,
extraordinarily well-developed sixth sense, don't they?
it's amazing, isn't it? That kind of intuition is extraordinary. As soon as I got in, he would just not leave me alone. I'd sit down and he'd watch the news and have a drink. He always sat next to me. And as he sat next to me, he always put his paw on my arm,
Oh.
like he owned me, as it were, or like he was saying, "Here I am." And when I talked to him, he did that sort of wonderful, I suppose, Princess Diana thing of turning his head to one side and, looking a bit gooey-eyed. And that, of course, melted me a lot anyway. But I got a feeling that when I was talking to him, that he understood what I was saying.
Mm,
The only problem was I didn't necessarily understood completely what he was saying, but we had a very, very, very complete
excellent.
communication, and he worked his way so completely into my heart. I adored him, and I thought there's more. There is, and this is such a stupid thing to say at my because then I was into my 60s then.
Mhm,
Um, or was I in my late 50s? Somewhere around then. Anyway,
mhm,
I thought, you know, I thought that I thought I was a compassionate person. I thought I was empathetic because I had
mm,
dogs. Um, but I realized I was suffering from speciesism because
mm,
I cared about the dogs, but I didn't care about all other species who share our wonderful planet. And it was DJ who he was my gatekeeper. He opened the gate into that particular universal room of
mhm, mhm.
understanding and caring about sentience for any living creature. And I pay tribute to him. Sadly, I lost him 11 years ago in 2015. He was 15 years old, going on 16. And
A good age.
he was a good age,
And you
yes.
can never have them long enough, can you?
We never have them long enough.
No.
Now, during that period of time, we had about 15 dogs of one kind or another. DJ was certainly the biggest
Mhm,
boast in my heart. But then, in alongside DJ, I also rescued from a pound in North London and the most wonderful Staffy cross, and she was a blonde Staffy
mhm,
mixed with a long dog. So she wasn't a short-legged Staffy quite at all.
mhm,
And I,
mhm.
and I called her Pippa, and Pippa, alongside DJ, controlled my life entirely. And I lost her sadly just a year ago, and I still haven't got over it. it just
You
stays with
don't,
you.
you don't. It's very difficult. I mean, I lost two in a 6 month period in 2022,
Awful.
and it's horrible.
Yeah.
It really is. It's
Um,
losing two members of one's family. It's just devastating.
that's horrible, isn't it?
They're all different. A lot of people just look at animals and think they're all the same, or, oh, it's just a dog, just a cat. But no, if you really get animals, if you really live with them and get to know
Yeah.
them, then they're not just the same.
They're
They're all
not. They're
very
all different.
different. They're unique,
They're
like a person.
like all humans. All
Yeah,
humans are different and unique and
we
extraordinary.
are. We
And yes,
are.
it is, as you say, so clearly, you have to take the time to get to know them,
Mm,
to listen to them, to
mm,
understand their needs, to never consider that you own them,
mm.
only that we are here as their guardians and they are here as
Right.
our friends.
Mhm, mhm,
And they are here to teach us to live our lives in a more complete way, to live in the moment, to not bear a grudge, and to just, in as much as you can, enjoy each moment that you are living.
okay.
And
That
they,
that
go on.
ties in with my question.
Yeah.
Do you feel so where do you feel there's the next real shift in public attitudes? And do you think we're close to it? So we've just been talking about you know, speciesism
Yeah.
and recognizing the sentience of other species, including our domestic animals. Um, is that what we, sort of increasingly need to embrace, that they are, they're separate species, but they're not, they are sentient.
Yes, I think that if we are serious about understanding and exhibiting compassion, everyone has to take that step and move into that particular room and
Mm,
understand it. Do I think we're getting better? I'm unsure about that, if I tell you the truth, because if we see that just recently, our government here in the UK is going to stop the ban on imports of foie gras from France, stop the ban on fur, which is appalling. I mean, we banned fur farms in the UK, I think, in 2000 because it's so cruel, and we banned the producing of foie gras in the UK in 2004 or something because that
sorry,
is also so cruel.
this is the Animal Welfare Act, and they
Yes,
have, you know,
but this is
dropped
also
these ones. Of
this is
course,
also, sorry to interrupt you. This is
yeah,
also
sorry.
part of a new trade deal that
Mm,
our government is doing with the EU, and a red line for them is that we shouldn't ban importing fur or foie gras, two of the cruelest
it's
produced
absolutely
things that you
appalling.
can. It's
It really
appalling.
is.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
so I say,
It's
in
brilliant
relation,
you're you're supporting that, people like you are supporting that, because it's really important that we get the message across that this is not good.
absolutely,
And
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
it happens to be a so-called delicacy in France, but we don't have to accept it
Yes,
as
we don't have.
palatable on any level, do we?
Yeah, it's a delicacy
Really.
throughout the world,
Mm, it
sadly.
is.
And it's, I mean, as we know, it's referred to as diseased liver
Mm.
because the force feeding of a
It,
poor
it's
goose
it's
is so
horrible.
disgusting.
It's
So,
horrible.
anyway, so I say that in answer to your
Mm,
question, do
mm,
I think things are getting better? I think the fact that this can be considered by our government and it
mm,
hasn't caused outrage throughout the United Kingdom says to me that no, it isn't getting better. The
mm,
fact that we have an animal welfare
mm,
bill that is so far in the long grass,
mm,
all the things that I have been fighting for 20 years have now been put in the long grass by a Labour government that has the biggest majority a Labour government has had in my lifetime. And they are not doing all the things they could do because they are responding more to what is financially imperative in terms of trade deals rather than what is compassionately and empathetically imperative in terms of our lives to do with kindness.
mm,
And
mm,
so, and everyone, obviously I'm talking here, I'm a vegan and I've been a vegan for 15 years and I became a vegan for the very reasons that we've already discussed, which is that I found, having thought I was compassionate because I love my dogs and
Mm,
then learned more about animals through my dogs,
mm,
I then, someone said to me, could you eat your dog? And of course, I could never even consider that. But of course, people eat dogs throughout the world.
yeah.
So I then thought, well, if I can't eat my dog, why should I eat a lamb, a baby
Mhm, mhm.
lamb, or why should I eat, a poor pig or cow or whatever, anything, any animal? It's not, it isn't
It's a bit of
necessary.
a cognitive dissonance, really, isn't it?
Totally,
That people
yes.
have in their minds, oh, sweet, cute lambs scampering the fields.
Yeah,
I've just seen some today, and they were gambling around, and then, but it probably on Sunday, then people serve them up.
yeah, exactly,
It's
absolutely, yeah.
just, you
It's
know,
shocking, and as you say, it is cognitively dissonant, and I
mm,
suffered from that until I was in my early 60s.
mm,
Now I feel, having accepted that my total belief that all life
mm,
deserves what I wish, which is a free and happy life.
mm, mm,
I have now eliminated it, and I feel 100% better
mm,
physically and spiritually as well, because I don't deal, whenever I eat or whenever I
mm,
think, I don't deal with slaughter. I deal with life rather than death, and that is very life enhancing as far as I am concerned personally.
mm,
Um,
mm,
it also has, this all comes from, it starts with loving dogs, but
mm,
loving all species now. I
mm,
learn how important every single species is to the
mm.
health of our planet. Uh, All of the animals in the jungle, in the woods, in the forests,
Mm,
they are the gardeners of our planet, and they keep the soil rich and fertile.
mhm,
And,
mhm,
people like killing them,
mm.
foxes or trophy hunting, or, you know, I can see
But
your dogs are having a wonderful time in the
oh,
background. Just turn them
are
around.
they
They're all bundled up
observing
on
the
top of
show?
each other.
Photo video bombing.
Yeah, they look wonderful. They look so
They're,
relaxed and comfortable. They look lovely.
they are so very well behaved.
They're
Yeah,
fabulous. They're beautiful.
they're brilliant. Who would live
But
without them?
having the kind of conversation, if I have the kind of conversation I'm having with you,
Mm,
with people who haven't or don't want to take the time to focus on this particular aspect of kindness or
mm,
compassion.
mm,
If I talk like this, their eyes cross. They look at me as if I'm an alien. As if, what are you talking about? Don't ask me to give up my meat.
mm,
And I say, no, it's not your meat. It's the flesh of an animal that's been killed so as you can eat it. But it's got nothing to do with being your meat.
mm,
And
mm.
yeah, I mean, there is a sense of this person I'm talking to is deranged, which so this all links to your question. Do I think things are getting better? I think things have got better in certain areas, but not in others.
Okay, okay.
That was
Um,
a long way around to getting to that, wasn't it?
but thank you, Peter, and thank you for all of the work you do. You say things are not getting better, but you can see little inroads to making the world a better place. And the
Yeah.
work you do is only, adding to that and making the world a better place and, you know, improving the conditions of animals throughout the world, including the poor donkeys of Egypt and other countries.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Good. It's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.